This is episode 1121.
Every R&D investments of new product investment takes time. So we've been talking for a while, we're investing in R&D, we're investing in new products. And finally, we are starting to see kind of the fruits of our labor, so to speak, come out. New products contributed over 200 basis points of our sales growth last fiscal year. We just closed our FY25. We think the new products are gonna contribute more than 300 basis points of our growth this fiscal year. We are launching, historically, maybe we have launched more products that are replacements of the old platforms we used to run. This year, most of our new products are truly new products. And, those are the products that get kind of designed and get implemented and rolled out with the customer input. So we feel pretty good that, we are finally starting to see the growth trajectory. And as a finance, we got to make sure we give our businesses the right tool, the right visibility, and the right analysis to be able to grow this company.
Hello and welcome. CFO Ademir Sarcevic is with us. Ademir's career journey from Sarajevo to global finance roles in Paris and Switzerland has been shaped by change, uncertainty, and the need to adapt. Along the way, he's navigated IPOs during market crashes, overseen complex integrations, and led finance teams through constant transformation. At Standex, he now helps guide a diversified industrial manufacturer with a disciplined yet flexible approach. It's a story of being ready for anything and the leadership lessons that come with it. Our talk with CFO Ademir Sarcevic begins after this.
When it comes to company spend, most finance teams are on defense, reacting to surprise spend, chasing receipts, saying no. But there's a better way. Meet Brex, the AI-powered spend platform that boosts a company's control, earnings, and speed. 99% of customer spend is compliant. 11 million hours saved on expenses and accounting through automation. $681 million plus back to customers in business building rewards. Make every dollar count with Brex.
And hello, we're speaking with Ademir Sarcevic, CFO of Standex International. You know what? I have something else I'd rather read. I wrote something up and I forgot I had done a little prep here. So I'm gonna begin with this instead. Hello, we're speaking with Ademir Sarcevic, who entered the CFO office at Standex International in 2019. Today, he oversees finance, treasury, tax, IT, and risk, a seasoned leader with global audit, accounting, and strategic finance expertise. Sarcevic now helps steer what is arguably an unusually diversified industrial manufacturer, spanning 5 distinct business segments. With products ranging from precision electronics to specialty machinery for markets worldwide. I don't always explain the nature of a business, Ademir, but I think Standex deserves it. So welcome to the podcast, and great to have you with us.
Good morning, Jack. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So the next part, I'm not going to stray from what I ordinarily do, but I just ask you to look back. And we're wondering, from your past, what were the experiences you feel prepared you for this role you have today since 2019, prepared you to what you've been up to this part of your career?
Yeah, no. So we have to go a little bit back in history. First of all, I'm not originally from United States, if you can probably figure out from my name. I grew up in Sarajevo in Bosnia, so I came into United States, during the war back home in kind of mid-90s. So, I would tell you, like, when you go through experience like that, it kind of, prepares you to, what we call at Standex today, be ready for anything. Life is unpredictable and you have to adjust to it and make the best of the situations you are in. And I'm sure we'll talk more about it as we move forward. But as far as my finance career, my first job out of grad school was actually in a company called General Instrument Corporation. We used to make those. If you remember, 30 years ago, we used to have those in the analog and digital cable boxes. Well, that's what the company did. And my first job was in what they call the finance rotational program. So they put me up, where when you spend some time in internal audit, general accounting, FP&A, And it kind of gives you a broad perspective on the company and kind of different parts of the finance journey. So I value that, and what we try to do here at Standex, is to give people kind of a similar experience in terms of, various roles they can play within the company. Actually, after that, funny enough, I went and worked for a company that was pre-IPO, private company, a smaller company that we actually ended up taking public. And when you work in a company like that, you kind of touch everything, from, reconciling the books to running payroll to accounts payable, accounts receivable, and you deal with some pretty unpredictable, markets and situations, if you will. So the good news is that we did take the company public. The bad news is we took it public right when the technology sector crashed in early 2000. So it wasn't as successful as we would hope it's going to be, but it gave you kind of a great perspective on what the risk and opportunities of different companies in different environments are. And the term, what I will tell you, Jack, I was also fortunate enough to spend, a couple of stints internationally. I lived and worked out of Paris, France for about 2.5 years as a financial controller for a $1 billion business of Tyco. And then I also lived for a while in Schaffhausen in Switzerland, I guess as the CFO for one of the, businesses with Pentair, a global business that, we ran out of Switzerland. So that international perspective kind of also gives you a different view on the world and kind of the finance function. And the last thing I'll tell you, and we can talk about this more, is I think I have been merged, divested, sold, acquired more times than I could count in my career. So when you go through situations like that, it also kind of prepares you to, realign, readjust, and, always kind of think about what's in the best value, what's in the best interest of shareholders, the best interest of employees, customers, and, it teaches you how to be flexible. And, I think flexibility in today's world especially is extremely important. So sorry for the long-winded answer. Hopefully that.
No, that's wonderful. How you ended, I think, is the most revealing, how you were flexible throughout your career and how you were willing to try to understand the landscape, whether it was a transaction or.
No, I think you're right. I think flexibility, you learn from every experience, you adapt, and you got to be able to be flexible in your approach, because what you think might be true today might be totally different tomorrow, and you got to be able to adjust. And I'll tell you one thing in Standex, for example, we do is we have a pretty disciplined, M&A process, acquisition process, and we run through each acquisition, very carefully, methodically, but we never get emotionally attached to anything. So at the end of the day, if the things don't make sense, we'll adjust, we'll realign, and we'll kind of move in a different direction. So, being flexible, also trying not to be emotional about situations that you are in is extremely important as well. And we are all human beings, we are emotional. So really you're looking at things, from kind of outside looking in, being objective, being flexible is very important.
Even back when you were an auditor, really, you were a strategic thinker. I have a way of thinking. In fact, what you just shared, you were a strategic thinker about your career as well as the businesses you served. How am I doing?
Well, you learn, when you are 20-some-year-old, out of grad school, obviously your view on life is a little bit different than, where I am in my stage of my career right now. But yeah, you got to approach, my advice would be for anybody starting a finance career, you got to approach everything with an open mind, and you got to be willing to absorb and learn and adapt. And, and I'm sure we'll talk about this too. We live in a different world right now where, the trade policies are changing, we live in the world of AI. And the finance professionals today have to adapt to that new reality. And, funny enough, I have a 17-year-old son who is getting ready to go to college, and he wants to study finance and economics. And, I told him, I said, look, the jobs I got when I got out of school are going to be very, very different than the jobs you're going to get when you get out of school. So you got to, take your college experience seriously, learn, and kind of try to figure out what that next step is you want to take, because it's different than what we did 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. Hopefully you agree with that.
Yeah. Did you ever feel as if you were being sort of labeled as an auditor and couldn't expand into a more strategic role through FP&A or what it might have been? A lot of finance leaders experience that. And if you confronted that at some point in time, how did you break out of it?
Yeah, look, when you're an internal audit or external audit, a lot of times you're viewed as a policeman. right? You're there to get people, but that's really not the nature of the role. And auditing is to a certain extent is an art, right? There are rules you got to follow. There are things you got to do, but it's all about relationships. And, how do you approach a certain problem? So, if you approach a problem or a situation by which you're there to help improve the controls or operations or stuff like that, then you accept it. Then you provide value. But it takes some effort. It takes initiative. It takes to being open, honest, and transparent. And really approaching a problem, some situation. And when you're in internal audit, you all work same company. You're trying to make the company better. So what can we do collectively to improve the controls and operations to take us to the next level? And, once the team gets the reputation of acting like that, but because you also have to behave, you have to live your values, you have to behave like that. Then, I'll tell you, in my audit career, and I ran internal audit at Pentair for 4 or 5 years, I was internal audit at Tyco for a while. The best phone call you get is when you get a phone call from one of your, business unit CFOs or IT leaders or presidents saying, "Hey, can you come and help me? I know you got other work to do, but I need help. And can you come and help me?" And once you start getting those phone calls, you feel good. That means you kind of made it.
What is your, just curious about your sort of arrival here as well. I think it might reveal something to us. I mean, you seem to be somebody, as you described yourself, someone who's always willing to adjust, change the lens, the aperture, look at the marketplace, your career a little differently, maybe. When you first arrived here, did you have a network? I mean, and by network, it might be professional, it might be family. I mean, did you have much of a foundation here? It seems like you could have gone to any part of the world. You came to the U.S. Was that always the plan? Give us some sense of your arrival.
Yeah, no, it wasn't actually, Jack. It was never a plan. I actually grew up in a kind of a upper middle class back home in former Yugoslavia. My father was a university professor. He actually had a PhD in philosophy, so that was his thing. So he actually unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, but to his last day, he couldn't understand what I do for a living. He's like, what do you do? And, and my mom was a high school teacher. So, yeah. And frankly, I was going to stay at home and study, physics or engineering. That's kind of what I was going to do. But then, life took its turn. We ended up in a very unfortunate war back home that, took a lot of lives, led to a lot of destruction. And, when you're faced with a situation like that, you try to make the right choice. And I was fortunate enough to be able to come here. Actually, I ended up eventually getting a scholarship at the University of Bridgeport in Connecticut. And, kind of adjusted. And, I was also lucky. There were some people that came from the same part of the world that were in my school. You kind of make your own friends there. You kind of go to school during the day and you work during the night. That's kind of how we operated. And you just, you adapt and you move forward and you make the best of the situation you're in. So, and the rest is history. And, I got to tell you, I love this country because, no other country in the world would have given an opportunity to somebody like me to accomplish what I have accomplished. And all of my friends or other people from around the world. And it's really an amazing place. And, it's good to call this country home right now.
I mentioned we haven't had too many finance leaders from your sector. Ever so often we do, but it's not. I don't think it doesn't have all the glamour of Silicon Valley. It doesn't, but you're running these large diversified businesses that are so complex and, require such a strong finance leadership. I mean, were you ever tempted? Was this your lane? If we go back from, to Tyco to, what would you tell us?
It wasn't. This opportunity just kind of came up, through actually, through a little bit through a network, but a little bit about Standex first, and then I can kind of tell you how I ended up here. But
let me ask you just to tell us about Standex. Then we'll talk some more about your industry.
So you're exactly right, and we'll go a little bit to the history of Standex to kind of give you a view as to how we got here. But we are an engineering components company that actually partners with OEMs, our customers, to provide solutions so that actually, Jack, I'll tell you, you kind of. We are a company that provides products and services that they're all around you, but you don't really know about us. So, for example, we make these little electronic reed switches. So if you have alarms in your house, more than likely some of our products are in there. When you drive your car, we design the interior of your car. That's what our engraving business does. So when you drive your car, you have Standex products around. If you go to CVS or Walgreens, you want to get a vaccine, for, anything, they'll probably take those vaccines out of Standex's, refrigerators. Or if you travel, for example, in an airport and you want to grab a sandwich, you're going to probably grabbing it out of Standex's, cold storage unit that we made for Hudson News, for example. So it's everywhere, right? But, and we run the company right now in 5 segments. We are actually focused on what we call the fast growth end markets. There's a significant portion of end markets that we are serving right now. They are growing exponentially, and we want to actually penetrate those more. But we are not done with our portfolio transformation. Now we have 5 segments. We said this publicly. We want to go down to 3 larger segments, kind of more customer intimacy focused. But to take you back in history, 15, 20 years ago, Standex had, my God, 15, 20 different businesses. And we owned everything from, I kid you not, grapefruit farms to Christian bookstores, candle stores, big commercial refrigerator units. So it was a very, very diverse company. And the way it was put together over time was, we would go and acquire, these companies that operate in niche markets. And as long as they were profitable, bringing the good cash flow, they became part of Standex. So that's how the company was built over decades. And only in early 2000s, kind of the board of directors, under the previous CEO, started streamlining the portfolio and kind of trying to figure out what we want to do when we grow up. And we feel finally we have grown up. We are at the point where we have a business, and all of the businesses we have today are great businesses that perform really well. They give us good margins. They give us good cash flow. But we still want to streamline it a little bit. So it's an industrial company. It's a complicated story, but it's getting more simple as we move forward. So now how I ended up here is I was actually at Pentair. I was the chief accounting officer at Pentair, in 2018, 2019. And, I still remember to this day, there was it was actually a weekend, and I was watching my son's soccer game. And Jack, it was a terrible soccer game. They were losing like 8-0. If my son ever listens to this podcast, he'll hate me for saying this, but it was a horrible game. Like they were playing really bad. And so the phone rang, and I usually wouldn't pick it up, but the game was not, attractive to watch. So I picked up the phone, and it was a recruiter. And he said, hey, I got this company up in New Hampshire, Standex International. They are looking for the new CFO. And they were actually looking to talk to somebody I know, not to me. So if I can kind of give them a referral. And after talking for about, 10, 15 minutes, I told the recruiter, how about me? Well, they said, well, would you be interested? I said, yeah, why not? I mean, it sounds very interesting. I knew David Dunbar, who is the CEO of Standex from my time at Pentair, at Tyco. So, they put my name in the hat. I ended up going to New Hampshire, meeting with David and the executive team, getting to know a little bit more about the businesses. And it's just the Standex culture, Jack, is an amazing culture. I mean, it just fit perfectly. And there was so much opportunity for value creation. So, and the rest, 6 years later, the rest is history.
I know there have been a couple of recent acquisitions. One beginning, I guess, in January of this year, McStarlight.
Yeah.
And so you're accelerating your growth via acquisition. How do you integrate? Tell us something about how you integrate these new businesses and measure their performance.
Yeah. So first thing, we kind of look, every acquisition we do has to kind of fit 3 criteria. It has to give us a strategic fit. So it has to really play in the exciting end markets that we want to play in, and it has to give us a strategic edge. Second one is financially it has to make sense for us. So we run significant number of different models, to say, hey, is this business really, what's this business worth to Standex, and how can we justify purchasing this business? And, the last kind of the method we run is, what would have to be true for this business to give us returns less than our WACC? And if we believe that's doomsday scenario, then we know we have a pretty good financial deal. And the third one, which is as important as the first two, is culture. The businesses that we actually acquire is the businesses we know for years. We know the owners, we work with them, we partner with them, we buy from them, they buy from us. And it's really getting to know the culture of the company and how they operate. Because, if the culture doesn't fit, your strategy can be great, your financials can be great, but if the people don't work together very well, it's not going to work. So we have to make sure all those three things fit. So what we try to do is, we don't come in and we are not the type of the company who's going to buy a broken business and say, oh, we're going to now restructure it and, we're going to, lay people off or move production. So we really look for that kind of a more of a synergetic top line opportunity. And for the most part, we ask the owners to stick around. We want to make sure that the prior owners stick around for at least 2 or 3 years so we can learn from them, they can learn from us, and they can help us kind of transition the company to be more successful together. So at the same time, there is a lot of kind of a back office stuff happening. The finance gets integrated, the IT gets integrated, all of those, the treasury functions or whatnot. And then commercially, we cooperate. But we don't do much in terms of, like realigning footprints or, moving sites. And then, we kind of, as a typical integration, we have integration team, we have, meetings we run and off we go. And I'll tell you, and we said this publicly, the last acquisitions we had of Emma and Orion and Max Starlight, have been phenomenal acquisitions. And frankly, they're performing better than we even thought. So we are pretty excited with what we got.
You put some emphasis on growing customer intimacy. Tell us about that. What is the company doing to achieve that intimacy with the customer?
Well, it's really working with the engineering teams of the customers to come up with the solutions that they need, and most of our businesses, not all, compete with that. I'll give you a perfect example. Our engineering technologies group, that actually, that sells into, commercial aviation, space, as well as defense applications. They work very closely with end customers to design those solutions, so for example, they work very closely with Airbus on designing kind of, our products for their next generation of aircrafts. And, there's a relationship that's based on, 10, 20 years of working together. And so it's really providing those specific solutions that the customer needs. And that puts us in a pretty good position because, when they need something else, they'll come back to us. So as long as you do a good job now and give them what they need, and give them a quality product with a good customer service at a reasonable price, when they have a next generation of airplanes, for example, that they are designing, they'll come and talk to us again. So that's just one example, but it kind of runs across most of our businesses.
Does the company's, has your resource allocation been modified to pursue greater customer intimacy? Are you investing in those relationships more? Is that what it comes down to, or no?
Yeah, well, you go back to 5-6 years ago, our R&D, first of all, our R&D as a percent for sales was less than 1%. So David Dunbar, our CEO, has put a lot of emphasis on, beefing up our R&D function, beefing up product development, building up sales and marketing functions. So right now, and then over the last 5-6 years, we expanded margins consistently, but we expanded it because we expanded the gross margin and we managed our G&A, but we invested more in R&D. So R&D right now, for example, is 3% of our sales. So a lot of those investments are now coming in terms of those customer relationships, launching new products, kind of entering adjacent markets. And that's kind of the way we play the game.
Tell us a little bit about your visibility into the business. And as you grow that R&D investment, do you feel as if you have the lines of sight required to make certain you're seeing a payoff or what have you?
Yeah, no, and every R&D investment or new product investment takes time. So we've been talking for a while. We're investing in R&D, we're investing in new products, and finally we are starting to see kind of the fruits of our labor, so to speak, come out. New products contributed over 200 basis points of our sales growth last fiscal year. We just closed our FY25. We think the new products are gonna contribute more than 300 basis points of our growth this fiscal year. And, we are launching, historically, maybe we have launched more products that are replacements of the old platforms we used to run. This year, most of our new products are truly new products. And, those are the products that get kind of designed and get implemented and rolled out with the customer input. So we feel pretty good that, we are finally starting to see the growth trajectory and, we're excited about it.
When you think back to 2019, you think about that finance organization that you inherited, curious how you might have modified it in some way, whether you reorganized it in some fashion or just the people who populate it today. In regards to those priorities that you have, how is that reflected in that organization that you've helped develop over time?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you, like the way we run the way we like to structure the team here is to have people of diverse backgrounds and diverse opinions, kind of across the team. I mean, that makes us better. So, I'm really, really fortunate to have an amazingly strong team, from our chief accounting officer to our head of FP&A to our head of tax, to our kind of a shared services leader, IR, etc. And, we have pretty robust debates. We have our weekly team meetings. We debate a lot.
Is that your management philosophy, do you think? I mean, a lot of people say that, but you brought it up pretty quickly.
Yeah. And, it starts
constructive debate or whatever.
It starts with David, who's our CEO. I mean, and there's a lot of debates that happen behind closed doors. And, he encourages debate. And when your CEO sets the tone like that, that's kind of goes throughout the organization. So the finance team is no different. And there's a lot of discussions. All of them are done in how can we make this company better, or how can we make the department better? And, there's many times, Jack, where, the team had a better perspective than I did, and we aligned around, what we thought was the best outcome. So, if you kind of come back so you want to have people in your organizations who are not afraid to speak up. You want to create an environment where they're not afraid to speak up. And then you want to give them the right tools so they can be effective in their jobs. So, for example, one thing we have done is, we had a very low visibility 5-6 years ago into the operations that we have across the globe. Our reporting system, so to speak, were not the best. So we upgraded that. So now, I can tell you, for every plant we have around the world, what's our, standard margin, what's our incurred labor, absorbed labor, what is some of the key statistics around, plant performance. We didn't have that.
Was that a tool or an organizational change that you made, or what? You upgraded it. What does that mean?
Well, a little bit of both. We put a new tool. So we implemented a system called OneStream, kind of that sat across our ERP platforms and standardized the way we look at it across all of our businesses. And two is the focus. We kind of refocused the finance organization to be more of a strategic partner, more partnering with the businesses about, what can we do differently going forward? How do we improve our visibility? How can we, grow faster? How can we expand margins? How we can generate more cash? So it's a little bit of both. It's the systems, it's the focus, and it's standardizing the processes, basically. So
when you say that, are your people, is the finance team stepping into meetings maybe they didn't participate in, 5 years ago, but they're showing up now just because, it's important that they understand or have information they can supply. I don't know.
Yeah, no, finance, we do have business reviews that David runs. Finance is obviously an essential part of those reviews. David and I participate in all of them. We have our financial quarterly reviews that, are run between the business presidents and finance and us at corporate. And, our tax leader, for example, is invited to all of those meetings. So he is, he's kind of picking and choosing the ones that are more important, the ones that he feels he can add more value. But it's a very inclusive place where finance is invited and, expected to participate in most of the business activities, which is, if you want to be a business partner, you got to do that. You kind of have to be in tune as to what's going on.
You shared with us that from very early on, your mindset has always been how to adjust to a different landscape. Of course, we're sort of in an environment now that seems to change day to day, tariffs and what have you. Can you reflect a little on the mindset you have these days and how you manage your finance team and, given the changing and constantly changing economic environment?
Yeah, I think the key is to be prepared, right? We live in a very fast-paced, changing environment where, what was in effect yesterday might be totally different tomorrow. So we have multiple plans. Even speaking about tariffs, and some of the stuff that's going on globally, we have a plan A, B, C, and D. We have a plan if the economy grows, what do we do? We have a plan if there's a recession, what do we do? So we have different triggers we watch and we adjust. So depending on what happens, there are things we feel really good, Jack, about things we control. Like we know the things we control, we can execute on. The things we don't control, if that changes, then you kind of have to switch your plans a little bit to adjust to that. But yeah, I mean, we have this motto, kind of ready for anything, and you never know what's going to happen today. And we are it's funny. I think one of our analysts was asking us, kind of on the call, how do you deal with this environment? And David answers it, and I think we all believe it. We are kind of the best in this environment. We thrive in this environment. We figured it out because we are scrappy, we are nimble, we are agile, and we don't also take ourselves too seriously. Like we know that we try to do the best we can every day at work. At the end of the day, we are not solving lives. We are not saving lives. Nobody is gonna die. We're going to go home, we're going to kiss our families, and we're going to try harder the next day. So you take everything with kind of grain of salt and the right perspective, and it's okay. You move on.
You described what I think I would call scenario planning, and all businesses have done this for quite a long time. But I'm wondering if there came a day under the circumstances, under the challenges that tariffs present and the nature of your business, whether you decided we need to dedicate or a champion to this, or our CEO wants to be part of this, or I mean, what can you tell us about that type of scenario planning that you described to us? Who is involved, and is finance helping drive it?
Yeah, so like for every business we have, and we have 5 different segments, there's a different scenario planning. So we'll be really partnering with the business, with the business unit presidents, the ops and the sales leaders, the finance leader in the business, and kind of few people at corporate. And then, so for example, it could be a specific initiative that our VP or FP&A is going to own, kind of run the process, but the accountability lays within the businesses. So that's when kind of the rubber hits the road. But yes, I mean, there's always somebody who is, process managing it, or, kind of setting it up so we can make sure we have a measurable points across the way.
We want to touch on AI with you, and we're wondering how Standex is leveraging AI. Let's begin with the finance function. Are there tools being used for forecasting yet, or risk detection, or FP&A automation?
Yeah, we are starting to look at it. We haven't, we are still kind of at the beginning stages of that. We are taking a little bit of a cautious approach with AI. But yes, I mean, there's a huge opportunity around FP&A, even frankly around, investor relations, some of the data you can see and you can absorb. So our head of FP&A and our head of IR are kind of championing that for us and figuring out how best we can use it. But we are very cautious because, it's a new area, and you want to kind of be careful what you do, if you will.
Can you maybe share a recent example where AI helped unlock insights, or let's say operational efficiencies in a segment? What would you tell us? Or maybe it's pricing strategy, who knows?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll tell you, like we run AI, for example, to tell us what's going on across the end markets, and kind of what is our competitors seeing. And, we then compare that to the way we are seeing it. It's pretty easy to get that type of a data, kind of a market study. What is, another example I'll give you, when you run through quarterly earnings, you can kind of run AI and say, hey, what was the common theme around this specific area? And you can see if what you are seeing and the way you're reacting is kind of consistent with the way others are seeing it. And if you are out of the bed with that, then you got to start thinking, hey, what am I missing here? So it's more about giving you perspective and things to think about, and as you kind of approach and solve problems, so you wanna move forward.
Just maybe in the context of acquisitions, have you either used AI or you're likely to use AI for evaluating opportunities going forward, such as predictive modeling of
integration
success, or common synergies potential?
We haven't yet, but it's on the list.
All right. So I guess, what about a broader vision here? Looking forward, what's your vision for AI strategic role at Standex?
Well, I think AI more broadly, AI is becoming part of our everyday lives, and it will have to play more into the way we run the company and the way we manage the company. But AI brings benefits, but also AI brings risks, So, we also have a duty to make sure the company is always protected. So, we actually have a CIO at Standex who joined the company a little over a year ago, and that's the first CIO role we had at Standex, forever. So one of his mandates is, as he came through, is he kind of help us evaluate AI tools and help us kind of figure out how to do this in the organized manner and how to deploy it most effectively around the company. But Jack, there is no doubt about it that AI is becoming part of our life, and we'll all have to figure out how to use it most effectively, and I think everybody's trying to figure that out. I don't think anybody has a secret sauce yet.
Just as far as your finance function is concerned, have you, and ChatGPT, the type of AI, employees across the company, have you had to come up with a policy as to how to license and how many licenses a particular department should have? Is that something finance got involved in, or not really?
Not really. That will be mostly with our CIO to kind of figure that out and put the boundaries in place.
Got it. Well, we are up to what we like to refer to as our finance strategic moment question. Again, this is where we ask you to look back in time and just share one moment of insight that you've experienced along the way. It might have happened 20 years ago, might have happened just recently. Anything come to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Well, look, I mean, I can give you several, but what I will go back to is in my time at Standex, actually, when I just joined as the CFO, we had, well, there's a COVID thing, but that's a separate thing. But, we had actually for our electronics business, we used to purchase, we still do, a rare earth material called Rhodium for the production of our reed switches. And for a very, very long time, Jack, it used to run about, $2,000 per ounce, right? So that was part of our, product cost. Well, it went from $2,000 to about $25,000 or $30,000 an ounce, literally within 6 to 9 months. And we used to buy 2,500 ounces of rhodium. So you can figure out, for a company of our size, the math becomes pretty, doom and gloom at that point. So I remember we ran that analysis. It was few of us, David was there, and, we said, oh my God, like we got a major kind of an issue here. So when you face a problem like that, you kind of step back. Okay, so let's break the problem into pieces and what can we do? So number one thing we did, we said, you know what? We got to stop our reliance of rhodium. We got to design a product by which, we can give customer a choice between rhodium switch and, the other type of switch. So we did. So we actually designed switches using ruthenium, which is much more, rhodium is very thinly traded material. Rhodium is much more widely available. It's generally cheaper. So we designed the switches that, use ruthenium. And at the same time, we said, you know what? We got to increase prices. We don't have a choice. So we did. And, we realized that, our, pricing power is probably a little bit better and stronger than we originally thought. And it was a really stressful period of time, but we managed through it. But the reason I'm mentioning that is, after the whole COVID thing, when the inflation came up, we already had a playbook how to deal with situations like that. And we were ready to react and kind of, do either do alternative products or do price increases and adjust. And, again, it just tells you got to be ready for anything. You got to be agile. You got to expect the unexpected. And, adjust moving forward. And you know what? I think we're going to have moments like that in the future too. And that's okay.
Curious, as you stepped in, as you were just describing, your first 90 days in that role at Standex, go back to 2019. What is it that you wish someone had told you? What is that piece of advice that you would give a new CFO today?
Well, I would say keep an open mind. Always understand why the bridge was built before you tried to tear it down. There is a reason why certain things were done in the past, right? Understand those things before you think about changing them, right? So it's really about learning. I truly believe the first 60, 90 days you got to learn, you got to absorb, you got to understand, and then you got to bring the team along for the ride as you kind of move forward and try to make changes or build on whatever was built before. Very often, business leaders, CFOs especially, can react too quick, become impatient. And sometimes you got to be patient. Sometimes you got to, kind of find the right balance and really truly understand things before moving on them. So that would be my advice. People, learn, adjust, understand. It's important.
We always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side. We heard a little bit about your early years. Anything your colleagues might not know about you? There must be so much when you lived in another part of the world for a spell, but tell us, share something with us.
Oh, well, you know what? I played piano for 6 years when I was a kid, right? And not a lot of people know that because I'm terrible at playing piano. Like there was only one song I still know how to play, and it's the old Yugoslavia national anthem. That's about the only one I know. And Jack, I did not like it because all of my friends were outside playing soccer where my, where my parents made me go play piano. And I still remember my dad telling me, saying, hey, look, you got to know this because you never know what's going to happen in life, right? Unexpected things happen, and he was right. Unexpected things happen. You have to be prepared for anything, except piano was not my passion. So I was never going to succeed anyway. So it didn't really go anywhere. But, maybe they'll ask me one day if they ever hear this podcast to play piano for them. The one song I know, but we'll see.
Have you, it would seem to me, as you explained, you came to the States, you've got a scholarship, the door swung open, and you go down the audit path. Could you have gone down engineering or some other area? I mean, you had strengths, which one would imagine, or what?
I'll tell you one thing, like when I came here, I really wanted to study engineering or physics. But then I realized, for physics, I probably need to go get PhD. It's going to take a long time. I need to pay more money for school. And so what's the closest to math and physics that I can, put my head around? And it was finance. Says, okay, so let me study finance. I can go finish undergrad, and maybe a year of grad, and then I can start making money. Because at the time, there was a need to start making money very, very quickly because the family and my parents were not in a very, very good situation. So that's kind of how I ended up in finance. And then, internal audit, it just happened. I was looking for accounting or finance jobs out of grad school, and just by pure luck, I guess, this internal audit and, actually was a finance rotational program out of General Instrument opened up. And that was my first role out of school. I loved it.
That's wonderful. We'll have to close with that and then ask you for your priorities for the coming 12 months. What would those be as CFO of Standex?
Well, we gotta grow, and we will. I think our focus right now is launching these new products. We operate in some very exciting end markets, and we want to grow the company. And as a finance, we got to make sure we give our businesses the right tool, the right visibility, and the right analysis to be able to grow this company. I think from a kind of we want to build on the team that we have and the processes that we have. So, you mentioned AI. I think we're going to start looking more intensely into how we can use AI applications across our department and across the company. And then, we just want to continue working on our portfolio and getting us to a place by which, is and meeting our commitments to the shareholders that we made. So that will be it. Simple.
Ademir Sarcevic, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you, Jack. It was great talking to you.